Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Las Vegas. This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. 1 full hour of wrestling news, entertainment, and lots of Sin City surprises from inside the squared circle. Now, let's bring on the host. Here is Mark Hoke.
All right, everybody, what's going on? Oh, I'm back. I did not die, Joe DeFalco.
That's what I heard. I was ready to have to take everything over.
Yeah, well, not everything cleaned up yet, but we're getting there slowly but surely. But I wanted to thank everybody for all the well wishes and everything while I was out, because anybody knows that when I miss a show, that's like wrestlers not going to catering. It just doesn't happen. So, I appreciate everybody checking in on me and seeing how I was doing over the past couple of weeks. And it's good to be back here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 720 AM, the Talk of Las Vegas, doing our Saturday night show. Of course, the best in pro wrestling news and entertainment coming at you. And I've got my partner by my side, Joe DeFalco of Future Stars of Wrestling. Joe, what's up?
Not much. I'm watching New England make a comeback. They're only down by 30 with 2 minutes to go. I think they got a shot.
Yeah, did you have a ticket on that one?
Yeah, I did have Buffalo, so.
Okay. Well, you should be feeling happy then.
I'm a big Buffalo Bills guy. Not that I'm like a Buffalo Bills fan. I just think they're a really good team. I got my little parlay Buffalo Bills and the Rams to go to the Super Bowl. I bet in the beginning of the year. So I'm rooting. It's going to be tough for the Rams.
Yeah, well, I think you got a decent shot on that one.
Yeah, they got a shot.
Yeah. So Andrew Fish Fain, of course, our co-host on Sunday, big Buffalo Bills fan. So he will be in celebration mode on tomorrow morning when we get back on the airwaves at 8 o'clock on our Sunday show. Oh, but man, I'll tell you, Joe, it has been a pretty eventful 10 days or so. I managed to, open up the DVR a little bit. We'll have my face buried in my pillow for about a week and a half here. But man, a lot of title changes, a lot of crazy stuff going on with Ring of Honor. WWE's got things going all over the place right now, trying to figure out how they're going to fix this thing with the COVID situation that happened at day one with Roman Reigns. But the one thing that I wanted to start off with you, because of course, for those that don't know, Joe runs Future Stars of Wrestling, great independent promotion here in Las Vegas, and Ring of Honor, of course, had shut down their operations, and they are now saying, "Hey, we're ready to go. We're gonna see you guys on April 1st in Garland, Texas, right around WrestleMania weekend." And they have been making moves. The Invading Impact just changed the title on their women's title as Deonna Purrazzo wins that belt, taking that off C-Rock. I mean, and of course they're defending their titles all over the place. And apparently the deal is we're gonna put our champions out there in matches, and it doesn't matter where they are. We get video rights, and so we can have them on our our Honor Club. And they're going full bore, Joe. It doesn't look like Ring of Honor is going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, running WrestleMania is not a big deal. Everybody runs WrestleMania. There'll be 3,000 shows that weekend, so that doesn't impress me. The stuff with Impact and the invasions, well, they're not under contract. Matt Taven and Bennett and all of them are technically not supposedly under contract to Ring of Honor. So is Impact just signing these guys and making it seem like, kind of like the NWO, Hall and Nash weren't with WWE anymore, but they made it seem like they were to try to put together that invasion angle. Not one of those guys is supposedly signed. The only one who I could see that would stick with Ring of Honor all the way through is Gresham. because, they had to make some kind of agreement like, hey, if we do shows, we want you to be the champion, so you're going to come back, instead of what they kind of spewed out to everybody was, hey, we're going to be like a super indie and we're just going to bring in certain guys and there are going to be no contracts. And, it's similar to Impact. Some of those guys got that kind of contract and some of those guys can do whatever they want. When I want to use Willie Mack, I have to go through the office and call D'Lo Brown. But if I want to use Chris Bay, I just say, hey, Chris, you want to work the show tomorrow? So.
Well, one thing that I find really intriguing about this is it seems like Ring of Honor is just sending people all over the place, GCW and other promotions. Is this a good move? I mean, I'm a little bit torn on it because I think, you're keeping your name out there, you're keeping your champions out there, and everybody's talking about you. But at the same time, boy, this, I don't know, it just seems like really unorganized. It seems like hey, go there, go. You're over there, okay, go there, and I don't know. I just wonder how they're going to pull this all together by the time they get to the Supercard.
So when Impact got the invasion, again, I didn't see that part. I saw the invasion. I didn't hear the commentary or nothing. But they're like, oh, my God, these are the guys from Ring of Honor? Or did they not even mention Ring of Honor?
I think they did, if I remember correctly. I think they did.
Obviously with Gresham, it's, they wrestled and he, it's the pure title or whatever it is, and he's defending that. So I'm really not sure. One of our trainers is Ring of Honor, Kenny King, and he didn't really have any answers for me. I wouldn't disclose the answers if he did, but I'm saying he didn't have any answers. So, he was kind of not having any clue, what was going on. But I am pretty certain that, Impact contacted those guys, and I guess I could find out, from Kenny or anybody else I could talk to if, was the deal set? Because, I was told the Briscoe deal was set with Ring of Honor. So it wasn't like, okay, because everybody's kind of like, oh, they must have known. They kind of leaked it to the guys. And, from what I'm aware of, it came as a shock. It was kind of like, hey, we're going to have a Zoom meeting. And it was weird because usually the Zoom meeting just has, management people and the upper echelon wrestlers, but this was like everybody. So they knew something was up, but nobody knew exactly. Nobody knew. It kind of was like it came out of nowhere.
Is this something that you would get involved in? If ROH said, hey, we want you to have Jonathan Gresham on, or we want to have Briscoes or anything like that. Is this something that you'd touch, or would you prefer to stay away from this for right now?
Not at all. A few years back, we had booked Eli Drake, now LA Knight, and he had kind of a confusing contract. They kind of let him kind of book his own things, and we used him, back in 2010. So he was always like a mainstay. He was our champion, and we had him booked for the anniversary show. And then actually Kirk White, who passed away from Big Time Wrestling up in Cali, he ended up going through the office and had booked Eli Drake for their weekend anniversary show. And they had first preference. So at that point, Sanjay Dutt was a guy that I was friendly with, doing some stuff with Cross and Jeff Jarrett when Global Force was out here. And they were like, we're going to send you Moose and Alberto Del Rio. We need them to have a match filmed at your place, which was at the Silverton at the time. And, you guys film it with your cameras and you guys edit it for us and send it to us, and we're going to air it on Impact. So there's no doubt that, there's no other Vegas company that can say, hey, that's what they got a chance to do. So Ring of Honor's bigger than us. So it's easy to work with people bigger than you. You know, that's why we work with GCW and we work with Impact and we work with Ring of Honor when they come out here. You know.
Well, do you think this whole thing with Ring of Honor is going to work? You know, I think that's going to be the tricky part here. Is they're going to come back, and
Ring of Honor has their name. It's Ring of Honor. So whether they show up on Impact or not, when they do a show at WrestleMania weekend, there's still going to be people there. There's probably going to be the majority of the wrestlers. But see, and again, to some people, it's a mistake. You know, they took care of everybody. You know, everybody got paid when they weren't running shows. And Ring of Honor was a company, like, I couldn't use Kenny a lot of times because Ring of Honor would, tape once or twice a month, and they'd run, 4 or 5 house shows a month. So they were running, 6, 8, 10 shows a month. So when the pandemic hit, they were paying everybody their salary, which got bumped up because everybody who not renegotiated, but when their contracts came up, when AEW, took Omega and the Young Bucks and Cody and whoever else left Ring of Honor, Ring of Honor had to up the ante, and they had now maybe the word is overpay. But they had to keep guys in check because Ring of Honor took a hit for a long time. They weren't doing nearly as well. They were before the pandemic. They were wrestling in half-empty arenas, and as I said, our Mecca shows, which we always ran the same weekend as Ring of Honor, because they would run Friday, Saturday, we would run Sunday, and when they would come to town, boy, they were selling out Sam's Town with high-priced tickets. And then as the last couple of years came about, our shows were outdrawing the Ring of Honor shows.
Well, that's because you're the man, Joe. We all know this.
Well, that's true, but, they kind of ran because you got to understand, when Ring of Honor runs in Vegas, they had an exclusive deal. So west of the Mississippi, Chicago, there were some places, but they never have run a show in Arizona. They've never run a show in LA, in Washington. Vegas was it. So they'd have their anniversary show, and it would pack the house because you get people from all over the United States. There was people from England. They had a good enough following that was a destination to come to their anniversary weekend. And toward the end, the problem was they had to rebuild a bunch of new guys. Guys like a Gresham, a Brody King, and it's easy to build up 2 or 3 guys and try to get them going. But when you have to try to push 8 or 10 guys,
a whole roster, yeah,
and that's what the issue was. There was too many guys that that's why Matt Taven became like their main guy for a while, because they didn't have the opportunity, and then they went and got Bandito and Roosh, and they grabbed all the luchas from Mexico that were getting a buzz.
Yeah, so this is going to be really interesting. I think we'll see where this all turns out as we get to April 1st. I think I may make a phone call here too and see what I can find out.
I'm hoping to do the collective with GCW, so I might be down there with an FSW show, but who knows?
Oh, nice. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a topic that came up that I wanted to use you for tonight, because I find this very interesting that WWE is starting to talk more and more about AEW. And this story came out of the Toronto Star. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but it was discussing the AEW style as opposed to the sports entertainment style of WWE. And if you didn't see it on New Year's Eve, there was a women's street fight match between Penelope Cruz and the Bunny against Ty Conti and oh my God, am I going to totally blank?
Penelope Cruz, ain't she the actress?
I don't know, but she actually did a pretty good job. Anna Jay, which got pretty nasty. And they asked WWE about this, and they had a comment. Here's what they said. if you look at the gory self-mutilation that bloodied several women in the December 31st event on TNT, it quickly becomes clear that these are very different businesses. We had an edgier product in the Attitude Era, and in a 2022 world, we don't believe that type of dangerous and brutal display is appealing to network partner sponsors, venues, children, or the general public as a whole. So WWE basically came out and said, that kind of stuff, no, that's not our thing. We don't believe in it. We don't think it's the right way to go. And it's not corporate friendly. It's not anything friendly. But I kind of beg to differ a little bit in terms of, now, obviously SmackDown's got the best ratings of any of the shows. But at the same time, people are paying attention to AEW, and you saw the PWI awards. Man, WWE got one award out of all the awards.
Well,
and
take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I know we'll probably talk about that tomorrow.
Talk about the top 500.
Yeah, on our by the way, on our special 90-minute edition tomorrow, we're going to get 90 minutes.
Oh boy!
So I can't wait for that. But as someone who's followed wrestling for a really long time, I like to see those kind of matches. I think that's part of wrestling, and obviously WWE, as disagrees with me. But Joe, where do you think about those comments as someone who promotes and puts on matches? And I've been to your events. So you get a little rough sometimes. What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I think WWE is 100% correct on running their company. They have the kids, the corporate sponsors. They have a built-in audience of families and great grandparents and, for 50, 60 years, that there's people who will watch WWE and will not watch anything else. Ring of Honor, ECW, AEW, Impact, they're all niche groups, and AEW is going after a version of the fan base that was Ring of Honor and then became NXT, except they went out and they got guys like a John Moxley and a Pac, and they got some great talented wrestlers that did not want to be in WWE anymore. They did not want to work that corporate, in many cases, boring style of going on TV. It's like Impact. I know plenty of guys that work for Impact that aren't that excited about it, but, they're going there to work. They're going there to make their money, but they're not getting the excitement of the matches. And it's kind of like what we talked about, somebody re-signing, somebody not re-signing. And then after they get let go, then they complain about the fact of the matter was they didn't get this and they didn't get that, but they also had the opportunities to leave because they weren't being used. But since WWE threw out $500,000 for them, what do they want to do? Go on the indie circuit and try to get a couple thousand a match? So, the way it works is with AEW, you got Jericho, and you got the Bucks, and you got the hot guys that were, the super indie guys. But then you also went out and you got the big name guys to make them more noticeable. So they were going to be ahead of NXT. They should have always beaten NXT because NXT is the minor leagues of WWE. So to say you beat them doesn't mean anything. You better beat them, And the question becomes, well, is AEW, to me, it's impossible. It'll take 10 years for AEW, I believe, to beat WWE because it's ingrained. Wrestling is WWE. They're on Fox, and there's no way AEW can beat that. People talk about, they sold more tickets at Arthur Ashe Stadium, the WWE. And it's like, okay. And then when they go and they do WrestleMania, 70,000 people show up. And the most that are going to show up to AEW shows 15,000. A lot of people just don't want to go to the house shows anymore because it's the same thing over and over. So WWE is number one. And AEW, they got to keep, look at the heat they got with the pizza cutter from Nick Gage.
Yeah. And,
you know,
which was kind of funny. That whole thing was pretty hilarious.
Right, it was great.
For those that don't remember that, by the way, Nick Gage is a indie Death Star or Deathmatch champion for GCW, and he used a pizza cutter on Chris Jericho in a match. And while there was a Domino's ad that was actually playing in picture-in-picture, which was just unbelievable.
It was perfect.
It was. Man, that's money for Domino's right there.
You think Domino's would have sent extra money to AEW for that? Instead, they were complaining about it.
Yeah, and so I think when you look at this contrast, because obviously now WWE is starting to publicly talk about it. I think the problem WWE has at the moment is there's just not a lot of passion involved in people getting into the characters and getting into the matches. It just seems like you're recycling just about everything over and over, and you haven't established new stars, and it's just kind of like, okay, well, there's Roman Reigns, there's Brock Lesnar, and then there's random matchup, who cares? And then on the other side with AEW, obviously it's a more hardcore style, so you could see why WWE's point that there are going to be some corporate sponsors that are going to want to stay away from that because they don't want blood, they don't want extreme violence or anything, and be associated with have their brand associated with it. So where's the ground in the middle? You know what I mean?
Well, the ground in the middle is the companies that aren't afraid of it is who they need to go after. And the companies, AEW probably was never going to get Snickers because WWE locked it in. And they weren't getting that. So maybe they go after, Butterfinger. You know what I mean? It's like there's a million choices. It's kind of like when you watch the news or when you watch local TV. There's 700 ads for injury attorneys. Well, how do you know who to go to? Why is Glenn Lerner better than this guy? You have no idea. It's because you see him on TV more. So everybody's throwing all their money into it because they want to make sure they're not forgotten because there's all these other companies. Well, AEW, they got to get their build first. They got CM Punk, they got Moxley. They can sell that, biggest names in wrestling. But it's going to take time, especially now because people talk about the ratings and, way less people watch. But it's like, 25 years ago, I couldn't go watch the entire show on YouTube. I couldn't go watch it on Peacock. I couldn't watch each segment individually and, watch it somewhere. That just didn't happen.
Yeah, we didn't have DVRs. We didn't have all these outlets to catch it. If we missed the show on Saturday morning, we were screwed. Unless you were lucky to have a VCR. I mean, we're starting to date ourselves here a little bit, but yeah.
Well, yeah. I remember when I first got it. It was called the TiVo, and I can't remember when I got it, but I remember the popularity was 2007, 2008, because we started our shows in 2009. And it was probably not for a couple of years that our commercials on SmackDown or Raw became pretty obsolete because so many people at that point had DVRs.
And we just
fast forward. We're going to talk 2011, 2012, just for that. And now every segment is cut up, and you can watch it cookie cutter style on YouTube.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, hey, we've got a lot more to talk about here in the world of professional wrestling. With Joe DeFalco and, of course, myself, Mark Hoke, on The Mark Hoke Show. We certainly do appreciate you joining us here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 720 AM, the talk of Las Vegas. And, of course, you want to follow the show at Mark Hoke Show on Twitter, Facebook, The Mark Hoke Show. And, of course, you want to follow Joe, FSW Vegas, on Twitter. He's got a big show coming up, and we'll give him a chance to talk about that a little bit later, too.
It's a Mecca event.
It is a Mecca of Meccas. It's going to be a hootenanny of Meccas. I can't wait. Hey, stick around, everybody. We'll be right back on The Mark Hoke Show.
This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Here again, your host, Mark Hoke.
That is correct. I'm still alive, everybody. I'm still around. But boy, I'll tell you what, Joe, I was bouncing in and out of work for a good week and a half here. And I got to say, the K-Dawn team treated me really well, so I want to thank everybody for that, and I'm glad you were so worried about me.
Yes.
That's it's all good. Of course, we are on the Mark Hoke Show here, Saturday night edition. Of course, we will also be back tomorrow morning, a special 90-minute edition of the show, starting at 8 a.m. here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 720 a.m. The talk of Las Vegas. We are covering the best in pro wrestling, and at times the worst. And, Joe, there was a worst that happened last week that I know since we didn't have a show last week, we didn't get to talk about.
Right, and I'm going to let you know that I woke up at 5 to 8, getting ready.
Yeah.
And I'm laying on the couch because I'm exhausted, but I'm getting up for the show.
Yeah.
And then it's like 8:03, and I'm like, what's up? They haven't called me, nothing. And then I look at the message at 6:36. Oh, there's no show today.
Yeah, I let you know. I tried, man. I really did. Honest to God truth on I actually worked that Saturday night because nobody else could do it. And I'm like, oh, my God, we didn't do a show. I actually, the couch was pretty comfortable on my 1 hour break that I had, and I just couldn't pull it off. And by the way, we also want to hope Fish's wife is doing okay because, of course, at the same time that I'm dealing with my stuff, she had COVID. So, Joe, you were the only one standing, man.
Yeah, I had COVID last year.
Yeah, well, there might be more COVID in the future for everybody. But,
it's a cold now.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I don't want you to get COVID, obviously. Of course.
I'm vaccinated. I'm supposed to be fine.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But, of course, last week, WWE put the final nails in the NXT black and gold era coffin. We watched Braun Breaker win the championship, and as he was coming out, he kicked over a giant gold X, which did not sit well with a lot of people. And then, after that New Year's Day show was over, well, guess what? William Regal, Samoa Joe, Gabe Sapolsky, Ace Steel, Dave Kapoor, Ryan Katz, just a whole bunch of people from NXT.
Road Dogg.
And Scott Armstrong, Road Dogg, of course, Brian Armstrong, all Eastois.
And more importantly, my ex-trainer, Allison Danger.
And I'm sorry I left her off because I got to tell you something, Joe, that one, if you didn't hear that story.
That was the worst.
That was horrible. She actually was hired to go out, and she's Steve Corino's sister, by the way, in case you don't know that, was hired to go out and do training for WWE. She'd been wanting to do that for a long time. She lived here. Goes out to Florida, and on literally the day that her kid starts school, she is notified that she has been fired. Wow. I mean, and I'm sure you probably know her. So, Joe, what do you got on that? I mean, what a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything yet. I know guys like Vandegrift and Damian Drake are pretty tight with her. And, she had told us months ago, and it was like, you're leaving? She's like, because she had to do they bring you in, and you get to be a guest trainer for a week. And when they like you, they kind of, keep you in the mix. And, she got offered the position. They needed some help with the women's division, and she has a really good track record. And, everybody liked her training. It was, she was pretty stern, in this day and age. Of course, some of the younger wrestlers, they're kind of, wusses about things. But, she still, even though she was very stern and made you work hard, she was really well respected. And what kills me is, it's all about the new regime. It's all about turning things over in NXT. And it's like, well, isn't she the perfect person? She's only been there 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
like you want to get rid of the 9-year veteran, the 7 years, because it's kind of like in baseball and football. You got to get rid of the coach, even though he's good. That people kind of stop listening one ear out the other because he's been there for so long. So you want to hear a new voice. Well, there's no newer voice than her.
Yeah, that was a sad story, but I'm curious that there's two things in terms of the fallout from this, and one involves what happened here. We've seen all these releases where people have gotten signed to contracts, and 2 weeks later get released by WWE. It's almost like you're now taking a massive risk if you sign with WWE at this point. I mean, if they call me up and say, Mark, we heard your show, we'd love to have you come out, pick up your things, come on over to Stamford. We're gonna have you do some stuff. I mean, I'd be excited, but man, in the back of my mind, I'd be like, do I want to give up my lease? You know what I mean? It's just, we had Taya Valkyrie was another example. She moved down to Florida and a couple months later got axed. And we're just seeing this over and over and over again. And man, it's got to be, nerve-wracking. Put a pen to paper when you know that they can just take that thing and rip it to shreds anytime they want.
Yeah, thankfully, I don't think they got rid of their house because I thought she said something about going back there, But again, they brought her in, and then they waited to use her in NXT, and then they finally used her where she was around for a while, and then it was just like, boom. And, and she went off, and you know what? Morrison, love John, one of the nicest guys you're going to deal with. You need him to cut a promo for you. He answers the phone when you call, and let me tell you, that is pretty rare with the really big name guys. They're just there. Give me my money, do the show. But guys like Morrison, Matt Hardy, they were always like, hey, Matt, can you do me a favor? I need a promo. Boom, do it. Same thing with Morrison, and he was our Mecca champion, actually, at the time that we knew we couldn't use him for the last one because I had already heard that he had re-signed with WWE. And he was the guy who basically had the two choices, the AEW or WWE. And, just like with a lot of these guys, they want that one last run because it's that bigger money. And, even that. They brought him in, and it seems like what they've done with a lot of their big-time veteran guys. They did it with the Dudleys, they did it with the Hardys, and they did it with Morrison, where they kind of bring them in and just use them as enhancement talent,
right?
But just bigger name enhancement guys. Like, wow, you're going to try to push Baron Corbin 6 different ways, but you can't push Morrison in one?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would really think that there's got to be a lot of discussion out there amongst performers that they have to be saying, man, the money's great in WWE, but boy, I'll tell you, you're taking a shot with, getting your reputation damaged, with goofy stuff. You never know when you're going to go. So this is, I think there's some interesting things that are going to be happening amongst people in the industry that are going to be thinking twice before they sign with WWE. Then the other side of this is there's some weaknesses that AEW has. Well, guess what? You just handed over, Gabe Sapolsky, who, some people like, some people don't, but an experienced booker, which is something that AEW doesn't have. A guy like Steven...
They're never going to bring him in. Tony Khan wants to do it all himself, so Gabe's got no shot there, to me personally. But, if he did, it wouldn't be as a booker. They can use him for, in the office. They may always need people.
Sure. And then you've got guys like, Scott Armstrong, who has done it all in this industry. He's been doing it for 40 years. And, of course, mainly has been doing referee training, which AEW, I really think, could use some of that. You've got experienced guys like Road Dogg, William Regal, Samoa Joe. You may have just handed AEW almost a blueprint on, look, here's guys, hey, we've got a ton of experience. We know how to do it. Maybe we can get in here and help out and shore up some of the weaknesses that AEW has. I mean, it seems to me that they almost have put WWE's playbook on a silver platter and said, here you go.
Well, a guy like Samoa Joe, the question becomes, is he able to wrestle? It was like that whole situation was weird. Then they brought him back, and then they had him beat Cross, and then it was like, he's going to give up the title. He's injured. It was like, well, he didn't get injured in the Cross match, so it seemed odd at that point. Then he was busy working in the office with Regal, and that was about it. And now you hear inklings of him saying that his in-ring career is not over. You bring Samoa Joe and rekindle CM Punk in him and Brent and Danielson.
Jeez.
It's like, again, those hardcore fans are going to love it. But the thing is, a guy like Samoa Joe didn't get the thing is, when he did get the concussion, he was finally getting built to be this monster.
Yeah.
In WWE, and it's really a shame that it took him. It's kind of like with Mick Foley to me, But Mick Foley did get the run. It took him forever, and he finally got there. And it was the same thing with Samoa Joe. Like, Vince McMahon, well, he's too fat. It didn't matter what he could do. He was too fat. And I remember Mick Foley going to bat for Samoa Joe, and finally he gets in, and they really don't do nothing with him. But then all of a sudden something clicks, and now they have this guy terrorizing the roster, and then he gets hurt.
And one thing about Joe that I think would be very fascinating to have him be a part of AEW is I think a lot of their larger wrestlers really need somebody else there to coach him up and help him out and mentor him. And
isn't that supposed to be Mark Henry's job?
Well,
big show.
I think they've taken Mark and have him doing other things. So they're trying to make him a commentator, and I question that. I'm not sure. He's okay. But you really should have a good group of guys there between Show, Henry, and if Joe comes over there too. I mean, there's people, and Jade Cargill is somebody that we're going to talk about tomorrow as another example of people that really could benefit from the knowledge that these guys have. And, you bring in somebody like William Regal, who just such a wealth of knowledge and technical wrestling and just handling talent relations. I mean, he's done it all too. You've got a group there that I think that if they depending on if they bring them all or bring some of them in, could really help AEW elevate to another level if they make the hire. So
I gotta believe Regal has to be a guy that they're going to bring in. Regal was a guy who used to go to PWG shows and see the Kevin Owenses and the Young Bucks and that whole crew. So his reputation is through the roof. So. And I'm pretty sure even the old school guys like Jericho and Billy Gunn, would have nothing but great things to say about him. Like I think Regal is a slam dunk that if he wants to keep going, and again that's the thing, does he want to, or does he want to just go back to has he made everything in the United States and he's happy with it, or did he do it because he had to and maybe he wants to go back to England,
Yeah, and and the thing is too, these firings just seem so spiteful. I mean, can you imagine what it's like for when Triple H and Vince are having conversations right now?
The million dollar question is, are they having conversations?
Well, that is a good point. That is a good point.
It just seems like there's some weirdness that usually through the internet, there's always these leaks. You know who's going to win all the matches. You know what's going on. You know who's backstage. In all honesty, you haven't really heard much about Triple H. He's still resting. He's still resting from the heart issues. And, unless he, they made it seem like it was a minor procedure. Well, I had a major procedure, and within a week or two, and just say a month, I was pretty much back to normal. This Triple H thing's been 3-4 months.
Right.
So, is it they're holding them off? They're not using them? And the thing is that it's been pretty tight-lipped from WWE about the whole situation. Like, there hasn't really been leaks like, oh, yeah, Vince and Triple H aren't even talking. Or, they're trying to sell it as, Shawn Michaels is taking over some of Triple H's duties because, they don't want Triple H to overly exert himself. And it's like, unless he's on his deathbed, Triple H is not going to want to just sit home and do nothing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, well, we'll see where that story goes, too. Hey, by the way, our buddy Jon Moxley is coming back. Finally, of course, you didn't know Jon Moxley had gone into rehab for alcohol issues, and he's going to be coming back to the ring, but not in AEW right away. He's going to be doing an event at the Hammerstein Ballroom with Game Changer Wrestling.
Yeah,
were you a little surprised to see that he's coming back at GCW?
Well, how do you know he is? Maybe he's a surprise at AEW this week.
Oh, that is a possibility.
They don't need to announce Moxley. They got so many guys. If he shows up and lays out CM Punk or something, that'll be all. People will be going crazy on Twitter.
That is a very good point. Very good point.
Because it's hard for me to believe AEW is his main contract. When I talked with him, he said he can do whatever he wants. Even though he can do whatever he wants, it's hard to believe that his first show back after AEW is taking care of him like that would be the GCW show.
Yeah, very true. So
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so, again, the conspiracy theorists are out, and maybe the deal was, hey, we're going to announce Moxley's back. It's a big deal, but not that it mattered. It's sold out, so it isn't like they needed to sell some tickets. It was kind of like when we had him. We didn't even know about it. The room was sold out. When we found out we had him, it was like, boy, we wish we were at Sam's Town. We could have sold more tickets.
There you go. Well, and, of course, you're listening to the Mark Hoke Show here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 720 AM. I'm Mark Hoke, along with the amazing, the incredible, the fountain of information, Joe DeFalco, Future Stars of Wrestling.
I amaze myself sometimes.
Yeah, so I've heard.
Yeah,
that's what everybody tells me. Now we're starting. Of course, we're gonna tomorrow when we have our show at 8 a.m. There's obviously some topics that I want to make sure we get to hit, so I don't want to trample on the same ground too much. But one thing that surprised me that happened this week was, of course, the Royal Rumble's coming up, and we're starting to see everybody make their announcements in here. And oh my God, Johnny Knoxville is going to be in the Royal Rumble. Yikes! Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. But one name that really did catch my eye was Mickie James is going to be coming back for the Women's Royal Rumble. There's one interesting, and you may say, well, what's interesting about Mickie James? Well, Mickie James is currently the Impact Knockouts champion, and she's going to be in the Royal Rumble. Joe, how shocked were you to see that Mickie James, who's turning into this ambassador of goodwill across wrestling, is, as the Impact champion, is going to be possibly heading into the Royal Rumble?
She had been with WWE forever. If somebody was going to do it, it was going to be her. It's not going to be Roxy or Deonna Purrazzo. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to care. But Mickie James, but she's another one talking about, basically a legendary figure who came back. Basically, they underutilized her, made her into some, it's hard for me to believe that a Trish Stratus or with Lita back or Beth Phoenix, that they would make her such a jobber the way they did with Mickie James. That surprised me more than hearing she came back. I remember the thing where they threw, with the clothes and her gear or whatever.
Yep, in a garbage bag. Send her stuff in a garbage bag.
And, and again, you could hear conflicting reports, but I heard they do that with a lot of their talent, that's how they send it. But they're not sending that anymore. But she even said, Vince McMahon called her, he apologized for what happened, blah, blah, blah. Like, obviously they still had a good relationship. Royal Rumble is all about surprises. Well, there's not a lot of surprises anymore if you're not going to use somebody that isn't signed, because with so many companies, even guys who never wrestle, like Mark Henry and the Big Show, are signed, So it's like a shock to me would be Chris Jericho showing up. You know what I mean? And
right.
It's like, and again, Chris Jericho did show up on Austin's show, sponsored by WWE, and, and he was able to talk AEW and everything about it. So, as they say, the forbidden door, blah, 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 and then I saw the post. Yeah, what about when Jim Cornette brought in Jeff Jarrett and Barry Windham and the Midnight Express? They did that. It failed miserably, but they did it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, this is going to be an interesting Rumble. And this year, given what has, of course, just happened with Brock Lesnar winning the WWE Championship, the Royal Rumble is taking on a whole new meaning this year because, Joe, for the first time in a few years, normally we could narrow it down to 2 or 3 people that were going to win. But right now, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of looking over the list.
I disagree. I think Johnny Knoxville is the on favorite.
Joe, stop it.
I want to see Johnny Knoxville against Brock Lesnar, Wee Man coming in, and out of nowhere, the babyface return of Bam Margera. It's written right there.
Joe, you should go to hell for saying that. I'm just
telling you.
But seriously though, I don't know if there's any, even on either side, is there a clear-cut person that you could look at and say, yeah, that, we know this person's going to win the Rumble. It's happened a lot, but I don't know. Do you see anybody out there that's a clear favorite right now to win either Rumble?
No, because Kevin Owens can win, Seth Rollins can win, Drew McIntyre could win
if he's able to go.
Yeah, that's true. It is a couple of months away. Hey, Braun Breaker could win for all we know. Solo Sikoa,
Well, and here's the thing. You're proving my point right now. Normally there's a rivalry getting built up, and that somebody's going to get that title shot. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be some sort of swerve that's going to happen during the Rumble that could set up the winner. For example, let's say the Bloodline costs Brock Lesnar the WWE Championship early in the card, and then Lesnar comes out and destroys everybody in the Rumble and wins it. Or something along those lines to kind of reset that storyline and, get it back to Reigns and Lesnar. But I don't know. I just don't see anybody out there right now because, of course, you've denigrated most of your roster.
Well, yeah, that's the main part. Who's hot enough to win the Rumble that people are really going to care about? It looks like they're, setting up, which I think way too soon, taking the belts off RK Bro. Like, really?
Yeah, that was a shocker.
You got so much, it's hard to get people over. And Riddle and Orton were like, they were the hot team. They were, one of the most popular guys. Nobody, New Day. They kind of ran their course. The Usos, man. Randy Orton. It's amazing that 20 years now, and he basically has reinvented himself, and he's playing the straight man to Matt Riddle,
yeah.
and the crowd is eating it up.
And they kill it. And they kill it. And if you don't know what we're talking about, by the way, of course, Riddle, RK Bro, Randy Orton, and Matt Riddle just lost the Raw Tag Team Championships to American Alpha, or Alpha Academy, excuse me. That is Otis and Chad Gable. So there's new Raw Tag Team Champions, and
Crowd's in a frenzy. They were in a frenzy when that happened.
Yeah, it was a very surreal moment, to say the least. And and not that I'm not happy for Gable and Otis. I think they're two great wrestlers, but boy,
then why have them lose 5 different times to them?
Yeah, that's another. Well, because that's how WWE books. You gotta lose 5 to win 1. But yeah, so pretty interesting there. Interesting development there. But do you see those guys having a long tag team title reign, or is this going to be a blip?
No. Nah, it's just something. Hopefully it's just because, like, hey, let's do a title change because, we don't do them that often, but when we do, it doesn't matter if it's a heel or a face. The people that are there are excited to have seen it. So there's usually that initial pop of, new champ. We got to witness it,
Yep.
And with WWE, you do it so much that maybe by doing it so much, it's watered down. It's like, oh, Charlotte Flair, she's held the title 100 times. And it's like, but, half the time she held it for probably less than a month or 2.
Yep. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Joe, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And we will be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 7:20 a.m. The Talk of Las Vegas, 90-minute edition. More coming with myself, Joe DeFalco of Future Stars of Wrestling, and Andrew Fish Fain. We will see you tomorrow. Get ready for a Trojan football report coming up right after this. Stick around.